The name of this video is The Old Slave House. It's the story of Hickory Hill Plantation in southern Illinois, one of the most brutal and notorious slave plantations in the history of America. Hickory Hill Plantation House is still one of the only places still standing that traded slaves legally, but oftentimes not. This is a story of misery, history, and the vile way that Hebrew slaves were treated by one of the most notorious slave masters that America has ever seen. In 1834, John Hart Crenshaw began construction of the Hickory Hill Plantation in Illinois, also known as the Old Slave House. A cornerstone on the left corner of the front porch foundation sets the completion date of the Old Slave House in 1838. Hickory Hill Plantation was known as the Old Slave House because although slavery was illegal in Illinois, slaves could be brought in from slave states to work in the salt mines, and Crenshaw needed Hebrew slaves to work as forced labor in his mines. The work was brutal, and few free men were interested in such harsh labor. John Hart Crenshaw owned several salt tracts and brought in slaves to work them. Crenshaw became the wealthiest man in the state of Illinois. He also soon discovered that even more profit could be found in the slaves than simply using them in his mine. He bred slaves, and he also became part of the infamous reverse Underground Railroad. While Harriet Tubman and other freed Hebrews who had ran away from their slave masters down south but were brave enough to go back down south and gather up more slaves and lead them to freedom up to the north. Thus, the Underground Railroad. John Hart Crenshaw was a key figure in the reverse Underground Railroad, where freed blacks were captured and then smuggled south, where they were sold back into slavery. Free blacks, even in the North, were rarely well educated. Slave traders sometimes tricked them into taking a boat south on an errand. For those Hebrews that were not fooled into going south on their own, many were forcibly kidnapped. The heathen kidnappers would rendezvous at either the Ohio or Mississippi rivers and put their victims on a boat heading south. John Hart Crenshaw was twice indicted for kidnapping free blacks, and newspapers of the time suggested that his activities were well known. But it was very hard to make the charges stick to the wealthiest heathen slave owner in the state of Illinois. Crenshaw's home was well suited as a station on this reverse railroad. He had a carriage door that opened directly into the house, so that the Hebrew slaves could be taken swiftly to the slave quarters in the attic at the top of his house. Legend has it that the house also had a secret passage from the basement to the river for taking slaves to the boats that carried them back down south. Thus the term sold down the river. Another legend says that Crenshaw bred slaves of his own, using a man called Uncle Bob to father over 300 children. And in fact, an ex-slave by the name of Uncle Bob Wilson existed and showed verifiable proof that he had in fact been kept at the old slave house. In 1842, Crenshaw was indicted for kidnapping Maria Adams and her children and selling them to a slave trader named Louis Kirkendall. Crenshaw was acquitted by an all-white jury, since kidnapping Hebrews was nearly impossible to prove. Blacks were not allowed to testify against whites, effectively muting all the best witnesses to the crimes that had occurred. Also, for conviction, the prosecution had to prove the kidnapped victims were taken out of the state. Forcible seizure was not enough. Crenshaw was identified in newspapers and letters of the time as a known kidnapper, but no convictions were ever made. One newspaper story suggests he was not well liked in the community. Hickory Hill Plantation is known for more than the evil and wicked deeds of the infamous slave master John Hart Crenshaw. In September 1840, Abraham Lincoln was in Gallatin County taking part in a series of debates where he hoped to organize the Whig supporters throughout the state. The Crenshaws hosted a party in honor of the debaters. It would have been a ball, with the dancers enjoying the second-floor ballroom in the Crenshaw Plantation House. The second floor was designed to be easily converted into a large ballroom because the hall and two of the rooms were made from movable partitions, particularly for such events. as was the custom of the time, Abraham Lincoln spent the night at Hickory Hill. It's likely that Lincoln shared his sleeping quarters with one or more of the other unmarried men in the group. It was not uncommon for social functions to include people of wildly different political beliefs, so Abraham Lincoln's politics would not have prevented him from attending a function at this plantation. In fact, it was at a bipartisan function in Springfield that Lincoln met his then soon-to-be wife, Mary Todd. In his later years, Crenshaw lost a leg under mysterious circumstances. Legend has it that a slave became so enraged at Crenshaw's beating of a young black Hebrew woman that he attacked John Hart Crenshaw with a broad axe, severing his leg violently. Crenshaw died in 1871 and was buried in Hickory Hill Cemetery. In the 1920s, the Hickory Hill plantation was open as a tourist attraction, mostly because the owner found tourists showed up wanting to see the infamous house, whether they were invited or not. Tourists claimed to hear cries and wails and whimpers and the rattling of chains in the old attic slave quarters. Legend has it that no one could spend the night in the attic. One story says that in the 1960s, 2 ex-Marines fled the house screaming after one such attempt to sleep in the old slave quarters. Also in the 60s, a small lantern was overturned and a fire started, so the owner stopped allowing people to attempt to spend the night on the 3rd floor in an old slave quarters. Today, the house is not open to the public. Some people hope that it will reopen someday because it is a historical site and registered with the government of the United States of America. Other people would like to see the Hickory Hill plantation and the unsavory history it represents simply be forgotten. In Labor Day of 1987, I had the opportunity to go to the old slave house. Equipped with my mom's VCR camera, me, my brother Moses, and Dr. O.G. Maddox went to the old slave house. We taped our journey and our visits, which you are about to see. Here's a footnote. Back in 1989, I lent out my only copy of the old slave house. And of course, when you give things to Hebrews sometimes, they don't find its way back to its rightful owner. So it took more than 23 years before I finally got another copy of the old slave house. We thought it was lost forever. But we thank the Most High that Dr. Maddox's son, Israel Maddox, kept a copy of an old VHS tape where he discovered the old slave house. And the good doctor was able to get it converted into a DVD. And 23 years after I last laid eyes on it, a couple of days ago it was delivered into my hands. And I, of course, have converted it that you might take a journey, Zion, into your ancient past, that you might gaze upon and see with your own eyes how heathens have preserved a part of our history here in America. And take note, on the day that we went to the old slave house in Labor Day of '87, we were the only 3 Hebrews in the whole county. We saw cars with license plates. We counted 20 different states. Why would heathens travel from all over America and bring their children to witness firsthand how Hebrew slaves were treated by one of the most infamous slave owners in all of America? Well, you're about to see for yourself. The old slave house, Hickory Hill Plantation.
House owned by the infamous and notorious slave owner.
We're here in Harrisburg, Illinois, 1987. We're about to visit the old historic slave house, 20 miles outside of Carbondale, Illinois. Even though it's 1987, we must remember where we came from. This is Dr. O.G. Maddox and Robert Knighton.
Yes. Even now, the heathen looks on at us. Right, folks. As we attempt to bring you our own documentary on bondage in southern Illinois.
For we must not forget where we come from.
My word.
Traveling down the road,
Why did you?
in the old slave house, Harrisburg, Illinois.
Now this is a road that ends into the slave camp. The old slave house, the Crenshaw Ball. On the hill. Black labor, black people built the road into the slave house. They're sitting peeping through the trees up there, as if it's know what's going on. The house itself. Can't no white people live in, they're scared to death.
Isn't there legends about people who couldn't spend the night up in this slave house?
Man, there was a white man wanted to spend the night up here from Channel 3 News. And he came up here, and as soon as the sun went down, he ran off, left the slave house. He couldn't stay in it, he was scared to death, because they believe in ghosts. I can see why they were scared. killed so many blacks in this little place right here, you wouldn't even begin to imagine. They cut down all the trees and made this here cornfield, I guess is what it is. And when you get here, you'll notice you won't see no blacks. And if you do it...
But there aren't many white visitors from all out of state, I see.
All of them white. I wonder why they come to visit. What they come there for? They can see what the problem is. They're scared to death. They want to see what they did, what their ancestors did. Because they see trouble coming along.
Now, what is this area here?
This is the road still leading to the old slave house. This is where the slaves dwelt. Somewhere in this barn and up here. Some had to sleep out here. They was the routed niggas. That's where they lived. They had to sleep in this shack right here. Will you please film this shack?
Yeah,
That's
we'll
they
get some
slept
excellent
right
film
here.
footage
They
of
had
the
the
shack.
same boards on it. Look just like it look now. Now you're really gonna see something when we get up on the hill.
See visitors still coming out of here. Is that the old slave house sitting up on the hill?
That's it.
I see the southern style plantation. So less than 120 years ago, we wouldn't have had this opportunity, huh? We would be slaves in this territory.
Now we would have been dead. We would have had a Chinese name now, Yimong Ha, off of that very tree you see right there. They hung about 10,000 niggas right on that tree. That's why the
Right
tree
next to the house?
Yeah, God got the blood raising the tree to haunt them.
For a couple of visitors coming to the old slave house.
My partner told me about this. Name is Joe and brought me to this place. I've been messed up. Because it's hard to imagine. I come from about many plantations in Mississippi, but I never saw one like this plantation. Especially in southern Illinois. And you see any black people?
We do all lives over there.
Right here. Oh, this is right. Yeah.
We're at the old slave house in Harrisburg, Illinois. It overlooks a nice hill, bluff area. And they say that Master Crenshaw was a millionaire. His ancestor that lives today in this very area is still millionaire. This is the line.
Come on, Wolf, come on.
Which part of our heritage in this country was made from. Rob, how do you feel being here at the old slave house?
Well, it's a very sobering and numbing experience to realize and know that on these very grounds, just 120 years ago, our forefathers had some of the most wicked and outrageous atrocities known to man committed. And I'm here to find out all the facts.
Dr. Maddox.
They wrote this place here. And after they got here, they was treated with the worst of treatment that any human race could withstand, I would say. They used to mine salt. Somewhere down here they mined. They had this huge furnace that they had to heat it. And they had to use labor. Now Crenshaw bought the slaves from Cairo, transported them here, sold them across the border into Indiana, bought them back, rehired them back out, leased them again, and brought them back here. And it was one slave after another.
In this very house that we stand in front of?
In this very house that we were fixing to enter in a very few minutes.
And this is April 24th, 1987? April 24th, 1987. May 4th? May 24th. We go get it right.
You go back to you can go back to 1687 if you want to. It don't make no difference about the date. It took place right here.
I see some visitors coming out of the old slave house. I see visitors still coming to the slave house.
But can you imagine what the slave went through with right here 120 years ago?
I care not to imagine it, Brother OG. I wonder what some of their comments would be, man. I hope we have the opportunity to get it on film. The old slave house. Says here that is a we see the original ball and chains. Could you say something on that, Doc Maddox?
Yes, this is the old slave house at Harrisburg, Illinois, where they held the slaves at over 120 years ago. Our ancestors. And this is some of the shackles and the chains and balls and the cruel treatment that they used in order to keep us here. And the reason is very mysterious because it's written called the Holy Bible. There was a man by the name of Lucius Caesar Sr. about 20 years ago taught me the truth of what it meant about the slaves in the United States of America and why it took place. He taught me that it took place because we sinned against God, and God put us in this unpleasant condition for a period of 400 years, just like he did the children of Israel down in Egypt for 430 years. But at the end of their captivity, God took them out on foot and took them back to the promised land, back to Jerusalem, just like he will in the United States of America with the blacks that has been brought here that was challenged from all parts of the United States up until this point. Cairo, Illinois was one of the most crucial holding points for the slaves. And it was transported from Cairo to here throughout the different parts of the United States of America. Now we're living in America. We are lost from our identity, our God, our land, and now we are trying to erase the identity of Christ among us because we are not who they told us that we were. They told us that we was colored people, niggers, Negroes, coon, shine, Annie, and all types of names. And you'll find this record recorded in the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy.
Of the Holy Bible?
Of this Holy Bible.
King James Version?
The King James Version. The only way you can find out your roots, you must start with this book. First, you got to open it up and you got to read it, and then you have to ask God to make you understand what you read. On top of that, Mr. Casey taught me to go to the libraries and research and find out what it meant. And it led us to the Hebrew Israelites, the children of Israel. We came from Jerusalem, the land of Canaan. And we was brought here because we sinned against our God. And he caused the other race to hold us into captivity for the purpose of our disobedience. White people did not put us into slavery. The God of Israel put us into slavery because we rebelled against him. Let's please enter the slave house. Yes. That's right. Oh, how you doing? Oh, real good. Long time no see. Haven't seen you in a while. Yeah, well, you still looking well. Yeah, you are too. How you doing there?
George Sales.
Please meet you. How are you today, sir?
Give me shake hands with your left hand.
How you doing today?
Real good, real good.
Good, good.
Sign in, please.
Okay, thank you. Here,
$250 each, please.
take care.
Well, I guess you know your black brother's up to get on the National Register now. This is a National Historical Landmark.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So you should be able to receive federal assistance now.
That's right. But I haven't, though.
But you haven't yet?
No, they say they don't have any money. $750, 9, 10, 20.
So we understand there's some old legends about people trying to stay in this house.
Oh, I want you to be sure and read some of the ghost stories. I think you will really enjoy them. Now, I tell you what I would like for you to do. I would like for you folks to read this informative sign and tell us why Lincoln was here. Young Mr. Lincoln was here in the early 1840s when he was here seeking political support from Mr. Crenshaw. Even Mr. Lincoln wasn't above going where there's money. And I want to show you something else too, if I can find it here. This was written by the Night Moves. This is a black magazine, Chicago, Illinois. I received this in 1982, and I have been showing it to people ever since. And this, the man who wrote this for me, so much better than I can explain, because the man was a black guy, but he had a degree in journalism, and he could tell it better than I could. Mr. Crenshaw was paying 1/7 of all the taxes in Illinois. His 30,000 acres was immune from federal and state prosecution because Crenshaw's power was such that the Illinois legislature put a special provision in the Constitution for him. Now, you think that's not power and influence?
That is power.
Yeah. And here's what the Night News said. We were turned down for the spot on the National Register 13 times, but we're on there now. They can't take that away from us.
And what is that?
That's the old slave house. We're on the National Register of Historic Places. We're very proud of it. Now, if you want to, this sign has been knocked down so much that you can see where it's...
I see everybody knocking this sign
Yeah,
down.
they sure have. You really touch it. Just make yourself at home and read the signs and stay as long as you want to.
Thank you,
Thank you very
sir.
much.
Thank you,
Buildings
sir.
out back to turn next to. Goodbye. So you still living up north?
Nope, still
On the first floor of the old slave house. This is one of the master bedrooms. We're not allowed to enter, but they are in their original, authentic state. This is where guests will live. As the gentleman said, Abraham Lincoln traveled here once. He was from Illinois, Springfield, and this is Harrisburg. And what room was this, sir? The Lincoln
That
room?
is the Lincoln room. All the rooms were all fixed to that proximity years ago.
What does that document say, Dr. Maddox?
9 days after the assassination, Lincoln was photographed in his casket in New York City Hall. The Lincoln family ordered place and proof destroyed. Film the article. We'll be all day reading this article.
Yeah, I think. In other words, in essence, what he's telling you, Lincoln was on ice for 9 days. He was on display 19 days total. His body was smelling so bad they had to do something. They had to do something quick. His body was coming apart. So what did? They put him on ice, And each day they put his new, fresh, clean suit on him and showed him that the night they'd have to put him on ice again. The next morning they would show him again. He was on display 19 days in May. See how hot it is? Okay.
Back then with no air conditioning, no electricity.
No electricity, no embalming.
And this is the authentic state of this house?
This house, except for this ceiling, this house is all original. And this house was built by some of the best black craftsmen that they could find. The best, the smartest, the most intelligent. This is all been
Hey, Dale, film this. Film what he's saying.
Yes, please say that again, sir.
I say this house was built by the most intelligent black craftsmen they could find in that day. They would go in the southern states and find the best bricklayers, the best nail makers, the best carpenters. It took 4 years, this house, for them to build this house. This house goes 7 foot down into bedrock. This house is as strong now today as the day the black people built it in 1834.
1834.
And it's still standing with a solid foundation.
With a solid foundation and without sagging forward joists. Everything is completely original. As you know as well as I do, black people have been stereotyped, but this goes to show you back then they were intelligent enough to build a house like this, to stand the ravages of the storms and the winds and the rains. It's still here.
Your honesty is brutal, sir. Thank you.
Yes. There are buildings out back you might want to come back and see me sometime, fella. Okay?
We're about to move up into the house, the old slave house.
You're going up the original stairs. If you look closely, you can still see the original square nails, each individual nail.
The original native.
You think we're in Hollywood? We're up on the first floor of the old slave house. In these cabinets they have on display the actual weapons that were used on this farm 120 years ago. Could you explain some of them weapons? Does that look like a 12 gauge double barrel?
It look like a sawed-off double barrel to me. I ain't never seen none of these guns before in my life, maybe one of them. And that long barrel gun look like a David Crockett's weapon.
These were the actual weapons that were used, and they still have them in their authentic state. There's a sign here that says slave quarters upstairs, which we will have to visit. These are some of the actual pictures. This is another room which Francine Crenshaw used after her husband's death. There's a sign right here that says it.
Dale,
Yeah.
I want you to focus on this picture here because something is very important here. And I didn't know this as much as I read about the Crenshaws. I knew about Uncle Bob. This is Uncle Bob. He was the
Let me get a
breeder.
good picture of that.
He was the breeder upstairs. I'll show you the room when we get up there. But here's what's strange about this picture to me. There's a white woman teaching him how to read the Bible. I wonder why the Bible. That's what Mr. Casey taught me, the Bible. He taught us about God, the God of Israel, where we come from, our identity.
Can I get you to read what that picture says right there? Oh, Dr. Miles?
It says, Uncle Bob Wilson, age 111, in picture, last known male slave, used by John Howard Crenshaw at Hickory Hills for breeding purposes. Pictured with Elizabeth Colwell, RN, in January 1946 at the Elgin State Hospital, Elgin, Illinois. Now, since I read this here, there was a black man that told me in Harrisburg a few weeks ago that Uncle Bob, just shortly before he died, that they took him to a nursing home, but he didn't know where the nursing home were. But he had got to the point of being senile and he thought that he was going somewhere to breed some women, because that had been his life, and that's what they had taught him. That was all in his brain. That was his job, was to breed black women upstairs in the slave quarters.
And how many children did he father, did they have on record?
According to the record that I read, about 300. If he had 300, that means 600.
Here we see some more of the
You see the old antique dishes that they used back in that day?
items they have on display. Those look like big shotguns with handcuffs, knuckle breakers.
And you say handcuffs. Now what man arm is that big? They got to have some handcuffs that big. It must have been leg cuffs. Or he had to be an awful big man. Even the largest handcuffs I ever saw.
Yeah, those guns look like they were pretty formidable even then. That's the master picture of Mr. and Mrs. Crenshaw, located here on the first floor. It looked like a Barnabas Collins type pose on the Rob.
Yes, I would say so.
You see swords and knives. All original items.
Also, I see something else very strange. I never saw this here before.
What's that?
And that's a wooden shoe. Wooden dirt shoe. I remember reading in the Bible about the children of Israel when they was in the wilderness. They was out there for 40 years and their shoes didn't wear out. But now I'm beginning to get a picture of why their shoes didn't wear out. I knew it had to be something. I knew God was with them, but their shoes didn't wear out. Do you know how it is? To wear shoes. I can see why they had corn on their foot too, with wooden shoes, because they don't give.
Is that what they actually had to wear, wooden shoes?
Wooden shoes. That's what it said.
And would you dare think that some of those same knives, man, that were used in some of the discipline that was inflicted upon the slaves there? Some of these same shotguns?
These same weapons right here is most of the murder weapons that they used in the first place to destroy a lot of the slaves, because this country runs with black blood right here on this hill.
And what are these devices over here?
It's like an old-time coffee grinder, cherry pitter, what is that?
I see about, what is that, about 4 more shotguns?
And also a couple of bills.
Yeah, those shotguns look pretty formidable even back then. And what is this room over here? This look like a balcony. More shotguns on display.
In that day and time, this was what you call plush, very elite, very rich.
This is a lot of the same antique furniture that was used then.
Same furniture. Most of this furniture is original.
And this is another one of the elaborately furnished rooms.
Yes. This is where they came up
In its original state.
and they got down. This is where the party
I
started.
like to note that they have bars because they don't want people inside disturbing the things
They,
that are,
they didn't have to have that
have been in
problem.
place for
That
years.
was serious discipline. They didn't have that problem. Black people obeyed because they had somebody to make them obey. That was a man in black lynched at this place right here. They didn't understand why they was in this situation.
Another room in the
They didn't
Crenshaw
understand the
Plantation
conditions.
home, first floor. I see an old phonograph that could have been used back then.
This was a tea room there.
That's what it says on the door. I see a piano in here. This is where they were served by handmaids and servants. And it feels quite strange standing here after 120 years. Shall we go upstairs?
Film the best part.
We're about to enter the slave quarters, the Crenshaw Plantation. This is located on the very top floor of the plantation. Seems quite odd. Master Crenshaw would keep his slaves, especially his breeding room, on the very top floor of his mansion. But he indeed did. The sign is that only women and small children were kept behind the iron bars. This was Uncle Bob's room, the picture that you're seeing downstairs. This sign says this slave could be beaten or chastised as his owner saw fit. Scars of a whipping were not common. Most slave owners preferred to keep the slaves unmarked. This is outside looking overlooking the back of the plantation.
Very small, dainty cramped corners. Yes, I'm sure that.
Could you get behind that boy, Rob, so I could see you?
Feeling of captivity. No man should have to endure such a cursed thing.
Ma'am, could I ask you your reaction to being here?
Spooky.
Is this your first time at the old slave house?
Yes, it is.
Do you find it interesting?
Yes, I do. Very much so.
Dr. Malik, can we move down here? I'm just saying that I
Now
get
you're
some
moving too fast. I want to
Coming
come
from
Uncle
me.
Bob's room. Uncle Bob was the father of 300 children here in this room.
in this
Right
very
here.
room.
Very room right here. It was very dark in here. There was no lights in here. The smell was very unpleasant. Plus the fact Uncle Bob
It's pretty dark up in
was
here.
the father of all the children that was here by the blacks. They bred us like cattle, animals. Right here in this particular room, this spot right here. Uncle Bob's room.
Is this a picture of Uncle Bob here?
That's Uncle Bob. And this home been a few years ago.
And what is this post? Is this a whipping post right here?
This was the most
Is this-
cruelest instrument right here in this whole entire operation with this pole. lot of black blood ran down these boards on this post because they wouldn't obey, and for the simple reason they taught us backwards, and they taught us their language and their way, and we became like them, and they totally turned us around and caused us to forget our heritage. We lost sight on our God, our land, and here we are 120 years later, trying to figure out what took place. Mr. Casey taught me that he saw blacks beat and whipped in Charleston, Mississippi, where he grew up. They used to tie blacks to horses and pull them apart. One part of his body would go this way, one part of his body would go that way. The cruel treatment that they used over here with us, God didn't intend for them to do that. They were supposed to punish us, but they wasn't supposed to do all the things that they did to us. The whipping post was the most cruelest instrument besides that furnace that was down in the valley.
Let alone those shotguns down in that display case.
Well, even with the shotgun, it would have been much easier because it would have been instant death. This was punishment. This here turned us totally around. These boards right here. There's a difference between killing a man and changing him into your way of thinking. And they changed us into our way of thinking on these boards, just like they showed in the picture Roots with Kunta Kinte. The thing that they showed was true. And it was much worse than that. But the place that they said they took us from was false and true to a certain extent because they loaded us on the coast of Africa. But we came from Jerusalem, from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Solomon, David, the 12 tribes of Israel. It's us, lost to our true identity.
Even though this is 1987, the heat up in here is pretty good, the humidity. So with an encampment of, say, 60 to 100 slaves up in here.
Check this sign out. It says only women and small children were kept behind the iron bars. Maximum 8 to 10 each in a cell. Can you imagine what 8 to 10 people in a cell would be like in 100 degrees, no bathroom, no water, and can you imagine what it smelled like up here? Now we had to do something awful bad for God to put us in this type of situation. It had to be awful bad. Are you all done? Good. The slaves were guarded 24 hours per day as they were eager to escape the inhumane treatment to which they were subject. And you can't begin to imagine what took place.
And on these very grounds we're standing.
These very grounds we were standing on. Not only here, it was throughout America. Just not here. But this was the most cruelest plantation in America that has ever been recorded in history. John Hard Crenshaw treated niggers like cattle and dogs and animals. I have a document that my boss gave me on my job because I was talking about this subject. And this is a bill of sale of what took place. Cunningham, Williams, and Nancy, 1776. Children born, John and Polly, 1796. And this gives you a list of
Hold that document up. Hold that document up.
This is a legal bill of sale. This is what took place at the auction in 1776. Now, read this. Now, this come out of Kentucky. Triggs County Court. Appraisement of the estate of Williams Cunningham, deceased, given under my hand this 18th day of January, 1824, G.H. Gordon, J.P. One black woman named Rachel, $500. Her child named Tilda, $100. Her child named Jeanette, $50. One black woman, Polly, $100. One do boy named Watt, that was me, $500.
You'd have been a do boy. Do this, do that.
The do boy. Now check this out. One ladder, $10. One reap hook, $1. 4 bedsteads and furniture and 2 bedsteads. One looking glass, $1.50. Total up to $144. Shotgun, $5. Check reel, 75 cents. Small killer, 10 cents. One big killer, 5 cents. 3 axes and a hole threw in the pot. The slave was the most precious, valuable
commodity
in this country at one time, and we still are. But this time we're very precious to God because he promised us that he would gather his people from the 4 corners of the earth and take them back to Jerusalem, the land where we come from. And it will only be a remnant saved because everybody can't take this, everybody can't understand this. This is common to me. I was born and raised in Mississippi on a plantation. I understand what the plantation was.
I'd like to mention that legend again. I see a couple of articles concerning it about how people are totally afraid to stay in the slave house.
The reason they is afraid is they know what they done to us, their ancestors, and they cannot understand how to cope with it. Because it was one of the most cruelest situations we ever saw right here. These are the cells. Can you imagine somebody sleeping up in here? It's about like the west side of Chicago. We had some little kitchenettes apartments about like this here. It also reminded me of Cook County Jail, 26 in California. They had some bunks similar to this, and they would put about 500 niggas in one bunk. And we had to stand in there together. Now, here's what I'm curious about.
What's that?
And that's where the old steps led to. What was up on top? You know the slaves were transported up here.
That's these steps that they have sealed off? Yeah, I see that they're sealed off.
What's on the roof?
I think here, even in 1987, they don't want to reveal all things. Here's a sign of an auction sale.
Having sold my farm and I'm leaving the Oregon Territory by ox team, I will offer on March 1st, 1982, all my ox teams except 2 teams, Buck and Ben and Tom and Jerry, 2 milk cows, gray mare and colt, 1 ox and then yoke, 1 baby yoke, 1 ox cart, 1 iron plywood wooden mold board, 1,000 feet poplar weather board, 1,000 feet, 10 feet fence rail, 1 60-gallon soap killer, 85 sugar. Man, what in the world is this here? term of sale, cash in hand on note, to draw 4% interest with Bob McConnell as security. Auction sale, same thing we read a minute ago about the Cunningham. Wait a minute, hold on, I left something. All right, get it locked up here. Man, can you imagine what it was like?
We wonder if that's true. That sign on the steps. Have a sign for it that says "Stay out." This could have been a torture room.
Stay out. This was the white man's room when he came up here and got your mother. And he took her in this room here and he gave her a baby. And that's why all you light-skinned brothers come from. This is the room. Did you see this room?
They subjected our 4 parents to that. This is the cruel and humane treatment that we were, as the sign said, subjected to.
This is it. The slaves could be beaten or chastised as his owner saw fit. Scars of a whipping were not common. Most slave owners preferred to keep their slaves unmarked. That's what this sign say. This was just one slave house. Man, they beat slaves so until they had marked to death.
Killed them. Can I get a picture of you behind these bars, Doc Maddox?
Man, I'm superstitious now, I'm telling you now.
This is the same old floor, about to fall in.
Don't mess me up here with these bars now. Hurry up and get
How do
me
you
out.
feel being a descendant of the slaves that were once 120 years ago on this very ground?
I feel very good because I had someone to teach me what it meant. And that was Mr. Lucius Casey. He taught me what it meant to be a slave, and he taught me one day that the bottom rail was going to come back to the top. And all I had to do was just wait on God, and I'll be on top. So I'm waiting to be on top, because I know what it's like being on the bottom. Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. But this is like prison to me. Maybe one thing, the difference here, you can walk out this door when you get ready, but it ain't like that in jail. You cannot walk out.
And even though we are the minority in the country, we are the majority in the penal systems of the prisons.
That's true. And now we lost worse than we were when we was in this condition. At least when we was in this condition, we understood that we was in this condition. Now we don't know we're in the same condition right here. The same slavery we still in. Only thing they did, they just took the chains away from around our legs and they locked them around our mind. Now we're programmed. So what's the difference? The only difference is that God is going to save a remnant of his people from the 4 corners of the earth. There's only one race of people that's on the 4 corners of the earth, and that's black people. Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, Jose Feliciano, all of them can see that much. We will be saved out of it if we turn to God and open this book and find out our true identity. And it's called the Holy Bible.
Is that the King James Version?
This is the King James Version. In order to understand what took place here, this particular place here, you must turn and read Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. And if you don't understand that about yourself and your heritage, you will not understand how to unlock this book. You must have the keys, and you must have the right keys to unlock the secrets of who you are, where you come from, and most important, your God and your land. Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God would set thee on high above all nations of the earth. This was talking about the children of Israel, us, the Hebrews. We are the children of Israel lost in the captivity. And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field. Blessed shall thou be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, and the increase of thy kind, and the flock of thy sheep. Blessed shall be the basket of thy store. Blessed shall thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shall thou be when thou goest out. That's when we was in the land before we was brought here. The Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and shall flee before thee 7 ways. The Lord shall command the blessing upon thee in thy storehouses, and in all that thou settest thine hand unto. And he shall bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. The Lord shall establish thee a holy people unto himself, as he has sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord thy God, and walk in his ways, and all people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of thee. And the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods, in the fruit of thy body, and in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy ground, and in the land which the Lord sware unto thy fathers to give thee. The Lord shall open unto thee his good treasures, the heavens, to give thee rain unto thy land in his season, and to bless all the works of thine hand. And thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. And the Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail. And thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. If that thou hearken, if that thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day, to observe and to do them, and thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day, to the right hand or to the left. You know the difference between your right and left? No. To go after other gods, to serve them. Now that's what we're doing now. We're serving other gods. But, Brother Casey taught me, whenever you see the word but in the Bible, there is problems. And here's the problem, right here. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come up on thee and overtake thee. Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Our store is cursed, our basket is cursed. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thine kind, and the flock of thy sheep. Cursed shall thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shall thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke in all that thou settest thine hand unto far to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doing whereby thou hast forsaken me. The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he has consumed thee from off the land, whether thou goest to possess it. The Lord shall smite thee with consumption, and with a fever, and with inflammation, and with an extreme burning, and with the sword, and with the blasting, with the mildew, and they shall pursue until thou perish. And we got all these diseases, from cancer to a cocaine addict. And thy heavens that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. Here it is, right here. Right here, you're looking at it. The plantation house in Harrisburg, Illinois, Crenshaw's plantation. God brought this up on us. He brought this up on us because we rejected him. We rejected our maker. He looked just like us. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come down upon thee, until thou be destroyed. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. That's when the ships went to Africa and loaded us on the coast and brought us here to this land and to this here destruction and to this place right here called Crenshaw's Plantation. Read the whole chapter for your entire benefit. The Lord will smite thee with the botch of Egypt, with the emeralds, with the scab, and with the itch, whereof thou canst not be healed. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. And he smited us with all of those right here in this old slave house. And thou shalt grope at noonday as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Every black man in America done experienced that, including myself. I've been married 10 times, I know. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. I ain't never lived in no house, period, because I was divorced every week. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. I've seen white people take an 80-acre farm from me and my parents when we were little small children, I won't never forget it, in Vaden, Mississippi. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given to thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. Thy sons and thy daughters, talking about the children of Israel, the black people of the United States of America, shall be given unto another people. And we was given unto another people, and we was brought to this place right here that you see today. And thine eyes shall look, and fail with longing. Fail with longing. What longing is this talking about? That was when they sold our children on the auction block in Cairo, Illinois, and throughout the country, and was brought to these plantation houses. And there shall be no might in thine hand. We was handicapped here. There was nothing that we could do because God had requested it. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up. And they did. And thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed away. And we were. And here we are. So that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. The Lord shall smite thee in the knees and in the leg with rheumatism, with a sore botch that cannot be healed. I guess that's herpes. From the sole of thy feet to the top of thy head, the Lord shall bring thee, and thy king which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. I mean our forefathers. And there shalt thou serve other gods, woods and stone. That's why we are all confused over in America until this day, because we don't understand what's going on. Thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb and a byword. Nigger, Negro, Afro-American, coon, shine. We do not know our identity because God placed this upon us. A proverb and a byword among all nations which the Lord shall lead thee. Thou shalt carry much seed into the field, and shall gather but a little in, for the locust shall consume it. Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but neither drink of the wine nor gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat it. Thou shalt have olive trees throughout the coast, but, here we go, but again, here we go. But thou shalt not anoint thyself with the oil, for thine olive shall cast his fruit. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. This was the captivity that we went in. God warned us if we didn't obey his commandments, what would take place. And here we are, lost in 1987, trying to figure out what's going on now, because we're in another captivity. Now we're brainwashed, I mean, to the max. All thy trees and fruit of thy land shall the locusts consume. That took place. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high. What stranger is this talking about? They just left. They're white people. That's the stranger that is talking about. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. We was brought lower than dogs and animals.
In these very quarters.
We refuse to obey the Almighty living God. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. I owe him about $20,000 now. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. I think all of us can see that. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he command thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness. We arguing about God. I know God. I know who God is. I know who the Lord is. The next time you think you know who the Lord is, the next time a tornado come through, stop it. And with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies. Now wait a minute. Now you have to slow down a little bit. Thine enemies? You
They said we would serve thine enemies?
Look, you mean to tell me we got enemies? Who is the enemy? Ray Charles can see who the enemy is. Which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger, in thirst, and in nakedness. We came here naked. We got off the ships naked. We was in filth. Just like in this here place, it was filth. It was pathetic. You can't imagine what kind of filth was here. They had to use the bathroom here on the floor. You see a bathroom? Let's think I'm crazy, nigga. In hunger, in thirst, in nakedness, and in want of all things. Black people is in want of everything on earth because we ain't got nothing. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far. And the nation did come from far. From the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flies, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. You'll have to go back to roots in order to try to get a picture of what took place. Because they taught us their language. They beat Kunta Kinte until he changed his name to Toby. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. On the 4th of July in Mississippi, they hung all of the old people that was too old to pick cotton. That was too old to work in the fields.
Was that part of the festivities?
That is part of the celebration. We don't know why we celebrate the 4th of July to this day. It was a hanging took place, and black blood ran and dripped all over this land here. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle, and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kind, or flock of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates, until the high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trusted throughout all thy land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout thy land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body. In AD 70, my leader taught me, named Lucius Casey, that black people ate their own children. cooked and ate their own children, and I have document proof.
When did this occur?
In AD 70.
And what conditions brought this on?
The condition that brought this on, we had sinned against God. Solomon married some Gentile women, and God took the kingdom from him because he messed up. And by him marrying these Gentile women, it caused Solomon to fall. God sent an adversary to Solomon. And the Roman soldiers burnt Jerusalem to the ground until blood ran up to the horse's brow bit in Jerusalem. It was black blood at the request of the heathen nations named Rome. God brought us down. It took God to bring us down. Couldn't nobody else bring us down. We was brought down by the holy God of Israel.
And you're speaking of when Titus encompassed Jerusalem in 70 A.D., cut off all food and water. This is what brought those conditions on?
This is what brought these conditions on. Now I'm lost. So that no man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eyes shall be evil towards his brother, and towards the wife of his bosom, and towards the remnant of the children which he shall leave. There, the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy is past, present, and future. That's what most theologians don't understand. That's why Jim Baker got messed up, because he don't understand this here. This was meant for black people. Them, if they wanted to accept it, but they never accepted nothing.
To the Jew first and then the Gentile.
Right last. God gave them a chance, but they rejected God. We rejected God, but we still got a chance. Because God declared that he's going to save a remnant of his people, whether we make it or not. But God is going to save a remnant of his people. This is the longest chapter I've ever read in my life. So he would not give to any of them of the flesh of his children, whom he shall eat, because he has nothing left, him in the siege and in the straitness, wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in thy gates. The tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set soul on her feet upon the ground for delicateness. Black women were so delicate, they didn't have to walk. Can you imagine a woman so fine she would have to walk? Don't mess me up, please. What's your mystery, please?
What do you think about this, Rob?
Evil towards the husband of her bosom.
Quite
informative,
should I say.
And towards her daughter.
Educational.
And towards her young one that cometh out from between her feet. And towards her children, which shall she bear. For she shall eat them for want of all things, secretly in the siege and straitness, wherewith thine enemy shall distress thee in thy gates. This was in AD 70, in 606 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar went to Jerusalem and besieged it. He shut the city up, put a defense around it, and cut off the bread. When you cut the bread off, you threw. You threw. You ain't got nothing coming. AD 70 took, the same thing took place. In the very short future, the same thing gonna take place here in America.
In this country.
Unless you want to go to a lake of fire and serve Satan and take his number 666.
Could you please repeat that?
Unless you want to take Satan's number 666 and go into a lake of fire and burn forever. Burn forever. No, you don't believe me. No, you don't believe me. It's not me, it's this Bible. I was taught this by my leader. He taught me this here. And look, ain't nobody gonna take this away from me. Wait a minute. No, you messing me up. Let's go to Revelation, the 13th chapter. And we'll see if...
The slave quarters pretty warm, ain't they, Rob? Uncle Bob. I don't know what to say about that,
and this
brother.
is what it said. I'm not gonna try to, because we're running short of time. And he causes all. Who causes all? He's talking about Satan, the devil, the beast, the United States government system. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand are in their forehead. Laser. It's very easily done now. You do not have to take a knife and carve a number in a man's head anymore, because technology has erased all of that. Are in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. 666 will be the new order in the United States of America that is already here, that's already set up in your grocery stores. They're going to guard them, and you won't be able to buy or sell food unless you have that number. Now what you going to do? Good day. Nice talking to you. But the ultimate of that is that God will save the children of Israel from the four corners of the earth.
Just as he delivered us from this slavery we was captured in.
He will deliver us from America also. Because the slaves never did believe that they would be delivered from this. You could have made them believe in that day and time that they would be delivered from this.
We're looking off the balcony of the old slave house.
And I'm just 36 years old.
Master Crenshaw owned all the land as far as you can see.
Master Crenshaw owned the United States of America. Did you see what the man said downstairs? When we first walked in, what's wrong with you, Dale? Don't do this to me, please. He owned everything in Illinois, including all the niggas and white people. Look, let's go downstairs, man. We're gonna go out and turn those old slaves out, man. We're gonna leave here, man.
Not too long ago, in the early 60s, we had two young men from Champaign, Illinois, and they were going to spend the night upstairs on the third floor. We said, okay, fine. So they came back with 2 chairs and a kerosene lamp to be in their night-long watch. Everything went pretty well. About 9 o'clock. About 9 o'clock, they heard a few shuffling sounds upstairs. Well, they had a tape recorder with them, and it went on accidentally. And it had a funny few noises. And the hair stood up on their arm about 1.5 inches. Yeah. And they decided, well, we're ex-Marines. We're pretty tough. Let's stay around a little longer. About 10:30, they heard a few more sounds they couldn't account for, like spiritual sounds, like people singing. And that didn't do them any good. So about 12 o'clock, they left the house in a bad state of shock and ran downstairs, hit this door so hard that they knocked it off its hinges here. We nailed it back. And they went to Champaign, Illinois, and got in their car and took off and left their belongings here. That was 16 years ago, and we haven't seen them since.
You mean tell me they haven't been back?
They haven't been back. They were too ashamed to come back, you know, after they were scared so bad.
Well, I want to spend the night here.
Well,
120 years ago.
Bondage. Captivity.
Better known as the Du-Bois.
How much would he would have went for, OG?
About $150, $125. Well, he's pretty strong, Buck. Maybe $250. What you say? $250 auction. $250 rob sold.
Don't holler at him, man.
How y'all doing today?
Good, good. Still getting visitors here to the old slave house. Let's look on the grounds, on the outside.
Dale, I got something in the back I want to show you.
They own all the land as far as your eyes can see on your television. As I stated, the people who are living in this area today, still multimillionaires. Is this the tree you was referring to, OG?
This is the tree. There's only about 10,000 niggas on this tree right here. How y'all doing today? All right.
How many did they hang, OG?
About 10,000. The limbs is bent over from the hanging now. And you know we would have did something awful bad. See how old the tree is?
Yeah.
Now check this cabin out. This cabin was gonna trip you out, and then you go. The tree is so old, they'll have to prop it up. You see? He was so bad, he broke the cable. Look at the roots of the tree. That'll tell you how old it is. Look how it's been pyramided up here.
Oh, gee, how much black blood ran down along these lands?
So many black blood up on the tree. That's why the tree grew so big. Blood, black blood. That's what watered the tree was the blood. Rob?
Yes, brother.
And can you imagine how you would have been 120 years ago right here?
And I shudder to even think about it.
It might have made you the breeder. I don't know. You pretty swift. Yeah, I believe that's
My name is Bob.
Yeah, but I would have been a do boy. I would have been what you call a house nigga. Cause I'm a little.
Do this, boy, do that.
Right. And I would say, yes, sir. No problem. Because I did that 20 years ago in Mississippi.
It seems quite strange that this place is so the tranquility, the peacefulness. You couldn't imagine the inhumane horrors that went on here possibly for over 400 years. What is this, OG?
This is where they kept all the bad niggas at. This is an old log cabin carved out of the trees that came out of the forest beneath the valley. They have reconstructed this here, but this used to be putted with mud. And this is where the slaves, this is where they hang out, they lounge. They used to stuff rags in these cracks up inside in here to try to keep warm in the wintertime. Now, I don't know what all took place here, because I wasn't here.
Well, them swords and knives and saws hanging there. I wonder how many hands have been hacked off and feet for trying to run and escape to get away from these.
These are the big, huge plows that they used to use years ago in order to till the the ground. You see how heavy the weight is on it? Just to hold it down in the ground. So whenever the ox or the mule or whatever pull it, then it'll really turn the earth over. Now this thing here reminds me of old whiskey still in Mississippi. They used to make whiskey out of these. But they call it a cooker. It is a steel. Part of a steel. I thought that's what it was. A whiskey steel. Them niggas made whiskey, them niggas got drunk and they threw down right here. This was the Cavalier Club, Charlie Fane, Age Lounge, Nick's Place up in St. Louis. Any juke joint you think, everything took place here.
What you know about Nick's Place up in St. Louis?
Well, I used to run around a little bit when I was young.
Is that another one of them whipping boards right here?
Man, this is the slave horse, a holding device. This is where they used to hold them at.
They have on this one thing here a rug beater. I'm sure they beat something else with it.
A rug beater. Yeah, that's what they beat the dust about the rug with. I can imagine that. That wouldn't be no problem.
What's a big horn?
It's just when they want to throw it off into your back. This is a oxen.
Horns off with. Where they
Oh.
keep it from hooking.
I hate to have one of them threw off in my back.
Hey there.
This is the slave quarters.
This is an old post hole digger. And also they used to use this thing to dig wells with in Mississippi. I saw all this here when I was growing up as a young man. These old hinges here for mules and horses, these old hay forks, these old mattocks, all of these old strange looking instruments, a lot of them are still down in Mississippi now. There's a plantation in Mississippi right now, got 800 niggas live on it, right outside of Greenwood, Mississippi, called Egypt Plantation. My boss took me there in 1970. And I grew up in the area, but I didn't know this particular plantation existed in this part of the South. Now this is considered as the North, but right here, there's a difference. something went down awful strange here. A lot of things that we'll never even realize took place here. From Route 13 north is Cook County, southern Illinois. From 13 to Cairo is Little Egypt. And all of the names is the names out of the Bible. Egypt,
Flower
Cairo,
will be on TV.
Cairo, same difference. But by us being brainwashed in this day and time, we don't realize, and we can't even think to go back because black people don't want to go back here. They don't want to research this and find out where they come from. Because we have been brainwashed by the white man and we have been taught his doctrine. And that's why we are totally confused.
We're on the grounds of the old slave house. And say that again about that house, OG.
It means that black people had to be very intelligent before they brought us here in order to construct such a structure as this here. They had to be very, very intelligent. We was brought and we was taught backwards by being here on plantations and throughout America.
I remember this sign here on his door. Is this where they brought the slaves who they tricked into believing they were freedom fighters? They brought them directly up to his back door and dropped them off on the way up to the breeding rooms. And
that's exactly right, from Cairo, Illinois. And when they got here, they didn't know who they were.
It says Carriage Driveway.
Where they come from.
So they would deliver right into the back of the house.
They would deliver right into the back of this house.
And they have a back stairwell that goes directly up to the top where the slave room is located.
Right in the last window up there. But here's what's astonishing to me, and that is, how could they live down below the slaves with the slaves above them?
There was a perverted nature.
They had to be awful disciplined. I mean, that means when they say be quiet, you be quiet. There wasn't no stomping going on up there because they did, they couldn't sleep. They had to be quiet. I mean, that was serious discipline. Let's visit this old shed over here. And you're going to see some skeletons that they dug up, that they found down in the old mines down there where they used to mine the salt. And this is Saline County. They used to mine salt here. And that's how Crenshaw obtained all of the wealth that he had because of the slave labor. He would have never been able to survive had he been in slave labor. Now I'm confused. I don't know whether this is a shredder. It can't be a corn sheller because I know what a corn sheller is. It looked like they busted rocks in it. I don't know what it is.
Taking pictures of me scratching my head.
Hey man, you know you'd have been a slave here 120 years ago?
Yes, that thought has occurred to me.
He's still a slave.
More often than not.
He's still a slave. He ain't been freed yet. If he was free, he wouldn't be here.
Just now I get to choose who I want to work for.
We would be back in the land where we come from. Right. We wouldn't be here. God kept this here for us, the wise, to understand what's going on. That's why we're up in business this place today. This comes from the Almighty God. This doesn't come from us. My partner turned me on this place, named Joe Lee Evans. I ain't gonna never forget it. It was a book that he got from a friend of his that led him to come to visit this place. Him and I came together, and this is what we found. Everything's still intact. But check this out inside. Please check this out. Old crop, old churn. That funny looking apparatus right there, the only thing I can figure out it could be was to haul hay up into the loft. Looked like you put a bale of hay in it. Now that thing right there with that red handle on it, I don't know what that is. And a host of other stuff I don't understand what it is. Cream separator.
But these were the tools that the servants had to use on an everyday basis.
These was what the servants had to work with. Nothing modern. Everything was totally manual. Now I know what that thing there is, because my old grandfather had one of them. And the fire used to come out through that hole right there, and they used to work on horseshoes with it and take iron and heat it and bend it. There. Please come back over here, because I just lied. That's not what that is. That's an old movie projector.
Yeah, right.
An old movie projector. Don't you get this here skeleton here. Found. You see this skeleton? It was found in a ditch near the salt well, 1 mile south of Old Slave House in 1906. He had to be an awful small man. Or maybe a young boy. But he had to be an old man because you can tell by the teeth. So he's a very small
That's a
man.
reminder of the cruelty. I believe he could have been beheaded, OG.
Or possibly harmed, whatever. But that is the remains of the skeleton. It's an old ringer. Old washing closet. Carpet stretcher.
Master Crenshaw on the line as far as you could see.
Yeah, that's a muzzle that you put over a calf and to keep it from sucking the cow. That's what they call a winger.
Ma'am, what do you think of your visit here to the Old Slave House?
Interesting.
Interesting?
I'm not on that thing anymore.
Are you all from here?
Carbondale.
Carbondale? Tell me something, is there an old slave house around Carbondale? But tell me this, what do you think about how they treated the slaves in that day and time?
I think they ought to be shot.
You think they ought to be shot?
So to be
No,
shot?
white people. They should, that's all human beings.
I wonder why did it take place?
That's what I like, you know. Because a person's a person, no matter what color, what religion, what anything. I don't think it's right.
I wonder why didn't they feel that way at that day and time?
It's like the Indians. I don't think they should have done that to the Indians either.
Hey! Come back here!
Old salt kettle. This kettle, the largest one used in boiling salt water into salt crystals, was used by John Crenshaw at the Salt Spring, 1 mile south of the Old Slave House. Crenshaw produced 200,000 bushels of salt per year. Salt sold for $1.25 a bushel. It took 300 gallons of salt water to produce 1 bushel of salt. Crenshaw made $250,000 a year from the sale of salt. He paid the state of Illinois $10,000 a year for the lease of spring or salt well. Notice the cracks in the kettle caused by filling with cold salt water while the kettle was too hot. The well was crude but effective. And you know why they poured that water in there? They wanted to bust that pot. Now, blacks weren't dumb at all. They wanted to crack the pot, why he had to go get another pot, that means that maybe he could go to a lighter duty job. This job here was one of the most cruelest jobs that ever took place on this plantation. And having our maker murdered at the request of the Roman soldiers, God placed us in this condition because our forefathers said, let his blood be upon our children, children's hand, and that punishment fell upon us. That's why we were brought to this place and we were destroyed from our heritage. That's why the question was being asked. Oh, no. That was nothing wrong. I've been through this type of situation. I was born and raised in Mississippi. I understand this here. But what was so amazing to me was to find this here place here. Well, you'll never know your future unless you know your past. And our past and our future is different from you all's past and you all's future. There's a difference between the two because we're a different race of people. And one race at this particular point is dominant over the other race, which God will erase very shortly. But it's been nice talking to you all, and you all have a nice weekend. Bye-bye, darling.